The next category of bullshit that we're going to talk about mastering is our demand bullshit. Demand bullshit is so insidious and the rabbit hole goes so deep, but I guarantee you that when you get a hold of your demand bullshit and you become an ask artist, you master the art of asking for shit, you will be astounded by how well your needs get met. Okay? Now there's a few pieces of this that I really want to lay out. Number one, the problem with demand bullshit. Here's the deal. Every time you make a demand on somebody, and even on yourself internally, you elicit resistance of one kind or another. Every time you make a demand on somebody, you put them in a binary situation where they can either submit to your demand or rebel against your demand. When we submit to demands, we maybe maintain some level of surface harmony, but we often sacrifice our own sense of dignity. Okay? And every time somebody submits to one of your demands, you will see collateral damage in the relationship later. If it's not an authentic yes that somebody's giving to you, if they're doing it because they're afraid of consequences, then you're doing damage to the connection. You're doing damage to the relationship to get what you want in the moment. Eventually, that's going to bite you in the ass. The other potential option, when you hit somebody with a demand, is that they say, fuck you. They rebel against you. And then they're going to maintain some level of dignity, but it's going to be pretty uncomfortable, especially if you're going to try to now use some kind of coercive force to get them to do what you want them to do, right? So when we make demands, we put people in a binary situation, submit or rebel. Neither option is good for the relationship. Neither option is very fun. What exactly is a demand? You might be wondering. A demand is any suggestion that somebody do something when you're not willing to hear a no in response. That's any suggestion that somebody do something where if you hear a no in response, you will immediately go into coercive behavior trying to get them to do what you want them to do. Instead of being like, cool, you don't want to do that. Or, I'm curious about that. Can we talk about it? So, the fundamental difference between a demand and a request is the level of ease around hearing no. The level of openness and willingness to continue to dialogue around hearing a no. We have just touched the surface of your demand bullshit, so I hope you're ready for more. Now, what do we do instead? We ask for shit. Or we become artists of the request. What is a request? A request is when you ask for something from somebody that would meet your needs, with a respect for the autonomy of the person you're asking. But a successful request is a doable request. Okay? A doable request is concrete, and it's something that you both know whether they did it or not. Okay? There are all kinds of interesting requests, which I like to call personality requests, like, can you just be more aware of my needs? Will you be nicer? Now, while somebody may actually want to comply with your request, it's actually a little bit overwhelming and it's hard to know exactly how to do that, right? So concrete requests, doable requests, are things you ask of people that can actually be done, okay? The other criteria of a doable request is that it's always stated in positive language. You're asking for what you want, not what you don't want. It's so much easier to actually fulfill somebody's request when they're being specific and asking for what they want. So let me give you an example. My son, when he was growing up, would come into the house, and we had a no shoes policy in the house. He would come into the house and he would fling the door open and run up into the house with his shoes on his feet, tracking mud and dirt into the house. So an example of a not doable request would be something like, God, just don't wear your shoes in the house. I'm asking him to do a don't, and it's confusing. It's making him wrong, and it's confusing. So we've already kind of started off on the wrong foot, no pun intended. Now, A doable request in this situation could look lots of different ways. But what I would typically do is I'd say, son, would you be willing to practice 3 times taking your shoes off and setting them by the door and closing the door? Just going to practice it 3 times right now while we're thinking about it. Now, my asking him to practice and reinforce that behavior is actually much more likely to get him into a habit of doing what I want him to do. Just saying, don't wear your shoes in the house, or from now on, would you please take your shoes off at the front door, is not nearly as effective as asking for a concrete behavior that's going to change things. Another form of a doable request is just asking somebody to take a moment to imagine with you. Would you be willing to take a moment to imagine with me taking your shoes off and setting them in the shoe cubby and shutting the door? Just imagine that with a big smile on your face. Boom.